Last time I introduced you to the power tier structure, and we learned about tier 1 in the pyramid of power tiers. That was worldview. But today, we're gonna go straight to the opposite end, tier 6. Fastest, cheapest, the least stable, yielding the shortest lived results, often viewed as the last resort tier or the we failed at all higher tiers tool, military force. And right now, Washington is waving it around the Caribbean like a guy who just bought his first chainsaw and really wants to use it on something. You know the saying, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem suddenly looks like a nail. Well, Washington is standing in the Caribbean right now, holding the biggest hammer on Earth. And Venezuela is suddenly looking very, very nail-shaped. Welcome to Eagle's View. I'm Tim. And look, if you're new here, stick around. I break things down, not sugarcoat them. Subscribe. People keep asking the same question. Is the US going to invade? Wrong question. Wrong battlefield. Wrong century. If you only look at the ships, the jets, the nuclear saber rattling, you're staring at the surface. You're watching the loudest tier of power and the least important one, because you don't deploy a whole naval armada just to hit drug traffickers. You don't park destroyers offshore because you're worried about fishing boats. You don't brag about having more nuclear weapons than anyone unless you're sending a message bigger than bullets. Something deeper is happening. Venezuela isn't the target. Venezuela is the terrain. The real target is influence. Supply lines, sea lanes, alliances, the entire geometry of the Western Hemisphere. If China or Russia manage to plant a stable foothold in Venezuela, the old American dominance, the quiet rule of the hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine, it cracks open. One port agreement, one mining concession, one little military cooperation deal, and suddenly the Caribbean isn't a US lake anymore. So, yeah. Washington showed up with a hammer. Because from its point of view, someone just started building a rival house in its backyard. Why is the hammer the easiest choice? Tier 6 power, military force, is loud, fast, and simple. Effective in short-term plans, good for quick wins, saved faces, sent messages, and immediate political dividends. Long-term, only repercussions. This is how this usually works. You see a problem, you point a ship at it. You blow something up. Instant results, instant headlines, instant approval ratings. It's the political fast food of geopolitics. Zero nutrition, but lots of flavor. But real power, real influence, the kind that lasts for decades, that comes from upper tiers. Money, diplomacy, trade routes, legitimacy, narrative control, worldview, like we discussed last time. Those weapons take time, patience, wisdom, coordination. The hammer, you just swing. And that's exactly why it's so tempting when you're under pressure, when allies are nervous, when rivals are creeping in, and when your own population wants to see you do something. Tier 6 gives you the illusion of control. Fast, loud, and visible. But here's the problem. It's also the most fragile tier. The results don't last. The blowback is unpredictable, and once you start swinging, it's really hard to stop without looking weak. So let's talk outcomes. 3 scenarios. Straight, unbiased. No cheering, no doom. Scenario A, the most probable one, 50% probability, the controlled squeeze. No invasion, no Marines, no beach. Instead, Washington uses the hammer as a prop while fighting on the higher tiers. You choke off smuggling routes, pressure offshore cash, scare investors, freeze intermediaries, cut access for foreign rivals. The Venezuelan regime doesn't fall because it's bombed. It falls because its money dries up, or because the elites panic, or because the pressure becomes mathematically unbearable. This is the smart play, the calm play, the don't set the house on fire to kill a mosquito type of play. It's Tier 3 and Tier 4 doing the heavy lifting, economic pressure and diplomatic isolation, while Tier 6 just stands there looking scary in the background. This works if Washington has the patience to let it work. If it doesn't panic. If it doesn't need a win before the next election cycle. Big if. Now, scenario B. The Caribbean quicksand, 35%. This is when the hammer hits something that isn't a nail. It hits mud, and there is splashes everywhere. Limited strikes continue, Venezuela resists in small messy ways, rivals get involved quietly, shipping lanes get tense. Cyber skirmishes pop up, paramilitaries start poking, it never becomes a full war, it just never ends. A gray zone conflict, a slow bleed, a permanent American presence in a region that refuses to stabilize. This is the danger of using Tier 6 too often. The nail bends, but it never breaks. And you keep swinging because you don't know what else to do. You become trapped. Not by the enemy's strength, but by your own inability to switch tools. And meanwhile, every month you're stuck there. China is building ports in Africa, Russia is making deals in the Middle East, and your attention is locked on a tiny piece of the map that doesn't even matter strategically compared to the bigger board. This scenario doesn't require anyone to win. It just requires everyone to refuse to lose. And that's how empires exhaust themselves. Scenario C, the diplomatic backfire, 15% probability. This is the one nobody wants. A strike goes wrong, civilians die, a ship incident blows up, a leak exposes something ugly, and suddenly the United States, the country trying to defend stability, looks unstable itself. Latin America pulls back, Brazil says enough, Mexico distances itself, Caribbean states close ranks. Russia and China step in not with weapons but with sympathy and contracts. And in one bad month, the US might lose more influence than 1,000 bombs could ever win. When the hammer smashes the wrong thing, the whole workshop turns against you. This is the nightmare scenario for Washington. Not losing militarily, but losing legitimacy. Because once you lose legitimacy, Tier 1 and Tier 2, narrative and moral authority, collapse. And without those, everything else becomes 10 times harder. You can't bomb your way back to being respected. So, the real question? Everybody asks, is the US strong enough to invade Venezuela? Well, yeah, it is. The real question is the US wise enough not to? Because a superpower isn't defined by the size of its hammer, but by how rarely it needs to swing it, or by the size of its patience. The strongest players don't win by hitting harder, they win by never needing to hit at all. That's Tier 1 mastery. That's actual dominance. That's what it looks like. And right now, Washington is testing whether it still remembers that. So this moment, right now, is a fork on the road. If Washington uses all its tools, if it remembers the upper tiers of power, if it plays the patient, long game, the hemisphere stays stable. But if it keeps reaching for the hammer because it's fast and loud and easy, then every challenge becomes a nail. Every neighbor becomes a potential enemy, and every strike chips away at the very influence it's trying to protect. In the end, the loudest weapon is not the one that wins. The weapon that wins is the one you never have to fire. Welcome to Tier 6. The last resort, the fastest high, the shortest win, and the clearest test of whether power knows when to hold back. Subscribe to always be aware of my newest podcast releases. Knowing our mental, spiritual, and physical survival depends on a flimsy world balance can trigger deep anxiety. I'm a coach who helps people transform to rise above fears like this, to experience permanent peace of mind and not panic. Book a call with me if you need help. The link is in the description below. If you want deeper breakdowns, join the inner circle on my Patreon. Scan the QR or use the link down below. There are no uncontrolled processes in this universe. If you think there are, that's because you are unaware of the controllers or the controls. Those who have better understanding of what's going on in the world govern those who lack that grasp. Knowledge isn't just power. I keep repeating that all the time. It's sovereignty. And right now, my friends, most people are sleepwalking. Okay, so this is an educational analysis based on publicly available information only. No classified sources used. Multiple interpretations exist. I invite you to develop one of your own. This is Eagle's View, where power meets perspective. Think for yourself. Rise above the noise. That's a wrap for this week. Stay safe, stay calm, keep your eyes on the larger picture, and bye for now.